food, friends, and family, we thank thee, O Lord, and may we always be mindful of the needs of others. Amen.
Amen. And with that, I'll request if everyone can please raise a toast. If you have something to drink, kindly raise your hand. Alternatively, we can have the hand to the chest. This is a toast to the President of the Republic of Kenya.
The President.
Okay, and with that, I will request if there are any announcements. And first, I'd like to begin by requesting Vice President Leah, if you have any announcement. Something to share about Mombasa, what's happening? No? Welcome, Rotir and Praful Devani. Thank you. Very glad to have you here from Rotary District 3060. Dr. Margareta, do you have anything to announce with regards to the legacy book?
Yes, I would love to encourage all of our members to be very willing and ready for interviews with President Ritesh, myself, and Rashmi for the legacy book, because we've been having wonderful interviews with many of our venerable members, but we've also sort of opened up the opportunity for all of our members to share their insights about Rotary and their lives. And I think it's a wonderful opportunity for us to leave this 90th year with our own legacy of greatness. So if people have been reticent about participating, I hope they won't, because we're very gentle, and you can see President Ritesh is not a grizzly bear. So please, when you are requested to participate in our legacy interviews, please come forth and say, yes, I'd love to. I'm ready anytime. Okay? Thank you so much. My little plug.
Thank you, Dr. Margareta. And all the members will get that message loud and clear when I share the YouTube link. And with that, I'll request if Dr. Michael Hopkins has anything to share with us.
Thank you, Ritesh. I'm actually in Nairobi, and I'm just on my way to Kasarani Stadium for my sins to watch a football match with Bob Munro. And I'm actually nervous about COVID. As you know from the sad news from my close friend Mike Eldon and his wife. So I just urge all members to wear their masks, wash their hands, and take care. I think COVID probably in Nairobi today, looking at the statistics, seems to have gone much worse in recent times. Sorry to be a tider of bad news. It's always good. It was such a beautiful day here in Nairobi. Not a cloud in the sky. Those are the positive things, and I hope it works out well for everybody listening today. But thank you very much, President Ritesh, for inviting me to speak on this day. And I spoke to Mike Eldon several times already. I feel so sad for him, and he's always been so careful as well. So it's a lesson for us all to really take care. Okay, thank you and you too, President Ritesh. You know, we really need you, and your good humor and your dynamism. It's very impressive. I'm going to watch the rest of this from a car, which takes me to Kasarani Stadium. But I'm very interested with our speaker today as well, and other tidbits of news which always come from the fascinating people here, especially from Margareta. I think she's still in the United States as well. But thank you very much, President Ritesh.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and we're very grateful. Enjoy your afternoon. And Rotir and Praful Devani, would you like to say hello to us? Sorry, you're...
Yes, I would like to say, I unmuted myself. Jambo to all of you.
Jambo.
Habari gani?
Mzuri sana.
Very good. I have been in East Africa, living in Mwanza. So I've got very much this thing with East Africa. And at the moment I'm living in India, I have taken my vaccine, and uh, we are really fighting very good for the COVID-19 in India. It is really very good, and we are really, with this type of dense population, we are doing very good. Thanks to the government. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for joining us today. And I'm sure we will look forward to your further visits virtually at our club.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen. With that, I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce our wonderful guest speaker today. Our guest speaker today is Riya Sharma Shah. Riya wears multiple hats of being a media personality, a passionate gender activist, a key representative in the horticulture industry, and most importantly, a single parent committed to raising her 4-year-old son. After qualifying as the youngest fellow of the Chartered Insurance Institute UK, she worked in the banking industry, rising through the ranks with one of the salient banks in Kenya, and concurrently worked as a presenter at East FM. She is the only woman representative from Africa on the Members Council of Royal Flora Holland, a 100-plus-year-old international cooperative of flower growers, and the biggest flower auction house in the world. Riya is also the founder of the African Girl Foundation, which is a non-profit actively involved in fighting period poverty among girls in marginalized communities in Kenya. And Riya also is a good friend. Welcome, Riya.
Thank you, Ritesh. I should address you as President Ritesh, because I see that, you know, that's what's been set this afternoon. So thank you, President Ritesh, and for this opportunity, and to all the other very esteemed guests here today. Thank you for the privilege of your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Riya. And can I please ask you a couple of questions so that we can get to know more? So, Riya, as per your profile, you are an active, ever-evolving individual, which we all know, and you wear many hats. So tell us more about the various hats you wear, and what are you most passionate about?
Thank you for the question, Ritesh. You know, I really had a hard time with this question. And when I think about why I had a very tough time with it, it's because of the kind of things that I have been doing. So I started my career in the banking industry in 2003. And prior to that, I was on radio already with East FM, which is part of the Radio Africa. It's under the Radio Africa group of radio stations, the radio group, which also has a TV station, Kiss 100, Jumbo, XFM, you know, and East FM was the vernacular station that they took over. So I was a presenter with them, and so basically I was a banker by day and I was a radio presenter in the evening. So I always like to say one job paid the bills, but the other was very fulfilling. And no prizes for guessing which one was fulfilling. After that, of course, I was, of course, in a senior position in the banking sector. And in 2017, when my husband was unexpectedly killed, I then had to change my career. At that point, I had to take several steps back from the radio station. And at that point, I was I was the breakfast host for East FM. And normally the breakfast show is the most popular show on the radio station. That was very hard for me to give up, because, you know, that's something that I was extremely passionate about. And radio gives you a very, a huge opportunity every day to meet different people, you know, through the radio. You have different conversations with different people. These were corporates mainly who were going, you know, corporate people who worked in the corporate world on their way to work. And we were given the responsibility of the mantle to ensure that their start to the day was good. So I was very passionate about my radio job. I still am associated with East FM, but now only on a weekly basis. And what I am most passionate about is fighting period poverty. that's really something that floats my boat. So I founded the African Girl Foundation to fight period poverty. I've impacted over 5,000 girls on my own merit with some very solid partnerships. And that is really something which is a cause very close to my heart.
Well, actually, as a fact, Riya, we have been seeing all the activities. Also, you're a prominent social media personality, and you've been sharing, all the activities which are happening on ground with this organization which you have founded. And we really praise you for that. And we will talk a bit further about that particularly also, because it's something which is also close to what Rotary does. And
Yes.
what I would also like to know, since you have mentioned about your radio show, and you've also mentioned about your foundation, but you are the only woman representative from Africa on the Members Council of Royal Flora Holland. And this is a matter of great pride. So congratulations, Riya, and tell us more of what exactly happens at that council.
So the flower industry, I have to say, first of all, was, and there are times, several times I have to pinch myself as well to really accept that, I am part of this council that has given me so much from the time that I have been affiliated with them. So essentially how I got into the business was my in-laws have a flower farm. We have it in Timau, just in Nanyuki. And my husband, Banti Shah.
Brownie size.
Sorry. So my husband, Banti Shah, was spearheading the farm unit on behalf of the family. And so in 2017, when I was widowed, my tribute to my husband was essentially to be able to contribute to something that he had started and something to add value. So that's how I got into the business in 2018. And, initially when I joined the family business and particularly the farm unit, it's a very male-dominated field, by the way. So even on our council of 42 men, we're only 4 women. And there of course needs a lot more representation, and that's the aim for the coming years, where they want to onboard as many women as they can. The Members Council is really a very interesting concept that came into being because they felt like the board was absolutely disconnected with the growers of Royal Flora Holland, or the members of the cooperative. So essentially this entire council has been created so that we can advise and contribute to decisions that the board wants to take. And we are the bridge between the members and the management board of Royal Flora Holland. So this, involves decisions on how to strengthen the clock, going digital with the auction clock. What are the consequences of that? Sustainability, which is a huge topic of discussion right now in the Members Council. The interview process was a very, very tough one, I have to say. Because they knew I was an outsider, the first question that they asked me was, tell us the difference between a spray rose and a cut rose. And it was a 4.5-hour interview for this position. I was interviewed by the highest member who's a grower, but now he was part of the interview panel. There was, of course, the international HR consultant, and there was the chairman of the supervisory board. So it was a very grueling interview, and getting the position had a lot of efforts that went into it. And it's still, of course, a very ongoing process. There's something to learn from the council, who has such a variety of people who come from diverse backgrounds. And I'm very fortunate to be part of a council where I can learn from people who've been in the horticulture industry for years and years, So that's been a very interesting, I would say, highlight of my career, if I can put it mildly. Yes.
Well, the fact is, Riya, and having known you for just a couple of years, you're ever evolving. So this is a highlight of your career, but I don't think this is going to remain the highlight. You're ever evolving. The highlights will keep coming your way. And with regards to what you've just shared with us, so this organization, this council is actually global. And
yes.
You get to express your views and exchange ideas. But at the same time, could you share with us maybe an incident where a certain policy has to be made, and a couple of you have lobbied, and actually it's worked out.
Sorry. Where? I didn't get that. Sorry, you got disconnected a bit.
Sorry, in the council where you've had these discussions, has there been any fruitful exchange where things have actually worked out according to the council's?
Yes, I would have to say that when I joined the council, I was very determined to make sure that the international growers were not treated as stepchildren. And the reason why I say this openly is because there is a huge divide sometimes, in my opinion, where you could be part of an international cooperative and they may call themselves an international cooperative, but sometimes because you're out of sight, you're out of mind. And up until the point that the members' council did not have, was not set up, I genuinely, as a grower, felt that maybe our needs were, I would not say not met, but maybe they were not highlighted in the way that they should have. And so when we were in the members' council, I'll give you just a very simple example of when COVID struck the flower industry. We make 20% of the auction, the international growers make 20% of the auction at Royal Holland. We were never really aware of the kind of campaigns that were being done to make flowers come back into demand. And everybody knows that the flower industry was one of the worst industries to be hit by COVID-19 because demand died and so many things had to be rescheduled. And one of the things I said was, what are you doing? What are these campaigns that are being done in Europe to make flowers come back into fashion, where people should, buy a bunch and maybe support a farmer back in Kenya? And we tied up with the Royal Flora Holland has, so basically every grower who's part of the cooperative has to pay a certain percentage to the Dutch Flower Council. And this money is then utilized to make flowers sort of, out there. We run campaigns where people come out and say, okay, when you're on top of, when you have these marketing campaigns that carry on, it's very essential for growers to know, that there's somebody on the other hand, if we're sending flowers to Holland, that this money that we're paying the Flower Council abroad and the flowers that we're sending, and it's not cheap to send flowers across, by the way, growers have to pay a lot of money. You're paying freight charges. You have to pay a COVID surcharge right now to the airlines. You're paying your unpackers on the other end. On top of that, you're even paying auction fees just to get one single stem, across to the other side. I'm sorry about that. And so what we did is actually in the council, we talked about how we can make these campaigns successful, how we can involve the international growers, how we can be part of these stories and show the plight of the farmers. So that was one of the very interesting campaigns that we did internationally. I can't share more because some of this stuff is very confidential. So this is just one of the top of the head examples, and I hope that would really suffice.
Well, that's very interesting, Riya, because it's a fact that the COVID pandemic has affected, the flower industry, as we all know, because it's affected travel, tourism, hotels, hospitality, transportation. It's affected the entire system, which can assist with, the flowers actually being transported. But at the same time, Riya, locally as well, now that the hotels have, some of them have not yet resumed operations, and they are probably, I would assume, the major consumers of flowers on a daily basis. So currently, what exactly is the situation? Would you be aware of the flower industry locally? Are the flower farmers actually still facing turbulent times?
So, one of the first things about flowers is that flowers are very weather dependent as well. And, when the weather is not very favorable, production drops immensely. Right now, the flower farmers, I would say, are Valentine's Valentine's is one of our most lucrative periods, as is International Women's Day, as is Mother's Day, which is, I think there's so many Mother's Day, it's hard for me to keep track of it. But the Arabic Mother's Day is what we're planning for. We then have the British Mother's Day and then the other general Mother's Day. All of these milestones, I think this year have given the flower industry a bit of a boost. I cannot say that it's been absolutely fantastic, because the carriers who come into the country still, we have COVID surcharges. You also have to pay a Valentine's surcharge, And obviously with all these little things that are happening, it's very hard for farmers to sort of really come back into the same positions financially that, pre-COVID, if you will. So it has been, I think, a very tough phase, but we can't complain. It's better than last year. I mean, at least something is better than nothing. The carriers are a lot more frequent. There's less cancellation of flights. Initially there were more lucrative routes for these airlines to go to, as opposed to come to Kenya. And that's why, it became so expensive to freight across flowers to Europe. And now I think with the whole Brexit happening, some of the new rules coming into place, there's so much at play when it comes to the flower industry. But everyone's taking it one step at a time and really hoping that, COVID at some point is going to ease things for us.
Yes, it's true, Ria. And since you mentioned this situation about now the flights actually are resuming, less cancellations and everything. But I'll share with you on the Rotary front, when this situation took place, COVID pandemic, and in Rotary we have individuals who are business leaders from across the different classifications. So one of our senior Rotarians is our past district governor, Dr. Bimal Kantaria. And what he
Yes, I know him.
Yes, and what he did is he initiated with our district an initiative called Flowers of Hope. And what they did is they were actually taking all these flowers from the Kenyan flower growers, and they were buying them and then distributing them at the hospitals as a way of keeping the livelihoods going. Because naturally, these are perishable. And, at that point in time, also the hospitals were getting quite busy. And flowers naturally cheer people up. We all know that.
Yes.
So Ria, I wanted to ask you, previously, it was known that cut flowers are the most profitable crops one can grow. And does this still remain true?
To be honest, if I was to really be absolutely authentic and answer that, in my humble opinion, it would be a no. And the reason why I say this is because the costs are the costs are really something that you need to factor in whether you can actually, when you're making your financial plan or your business plan, you have a lot of things to factor in, flowers, like you said, are perishable. Yes, it's very fancy to say that flowers are, required everywhere from cradle to grave. The first thing you think about is flowers. But also the costs of the business, you're looking at freight charges, you are paying your unpackers on the other end, and the auctioneers, you're paying your staff, your workforce. And unfortunately, these people have had to have taken such a big hit, by the way, when COVID hit. Most of them had to be retrenched. At Bloomingdale, we had a policy that we would not sort of let anybody go, but we would maybe, cut their salaries into subsidize their salaries that we were giving out, simply because some salary is better than no salary. So, and when you're struck with something like COVID, imagine in a flower business where you are fully reliant on, let's say, the auction, in our case. And I don't know if you saw these very horrifying videos where flowers were being thrown in Holland. It was extremely disturbing to see. And there have been some flower farms that have shut down. So in my opinion, I think there are more, growers who are diversifying to other things. I don't think cut flowers are the be-all, end-all profitable like they used to be many years ago. There are a lot of people going into avocados, moringa. So vegetables seem to be a very popular thing. I always say this, medicinal cannabis. Why isn't anyone doing that? It's such a popular thing. I mean, I know there'd be a lot of regulations and protocols on that, surrounding that. I know of people who are doing it in Holland. I think, if you've got the money, don't put up a flower farm, put up medicinal cannabis. That would probably bring you far more greater returns than a rosewood, in my opinion. But yeah.
But you know, Ria, having said that, which is a very interesting idea, and of course regulations pending, but I can almost imagine you as a flower grower when you're going to your farm and you see the beautiful flowers in bloom. I'm sure that must be quite a sight.
It's really, there is no feeling like that being on ground in a greenhouse looking at these beautiful flowers. It's really a very magical feeling. It's of course a huge reminder of my husband. You know, he put in a lot of thought and effort together with the rest of the members of the family in the farm. So for me, going to Timau is really not only rekindling memories of someone I've dearly loved, but also of seeing just how amazing you have to nurture these beautiful roses, and you know, see them in bloom is really, it's a majestic feeling.
I can imagine. So, Ria, now to touch upon something we talked about briefly earlier. You are the founder of African Girl Foundation. And I'm somewhat aware of it because I actually do see several posts about it on social media and many other platforms. But for the benefit of our club members and the guests, could you please share with us more about this foundation?
Thank you, Ritesh. That's my favorite topic. So I have to say that the foundation is something that is very, very close to my heart. When I started this foundation, it was mainly to ensure that no girl has to ever drop out of school due to a biological process. And unfortunately, the statistics are so scary. We're looking at 65% of the girls in Kenya who have to drop out of school due to lack of access to a sanitary pad. And unfortunately, these girls who you know, are in school and cannot afford a sanitary pad often get sexually exploited for as little as $50. You know, we have these boda riders who hang around schools, and these girls are very vulnerable. You know, they want to continue their education, but because they don't have a pad, they face leakages, which during the menstrual cycle, because of the kind of alternatives they use. So they use alternatives like they cut up a t-shirt, use that as a pad. They will use leaves of a tree, try and, you know, gather them together and try to use that as a pad. I once worked with a refugee in the Dadaab camp, and she said to me that she would have to cut the side of a tent and use that as a pad. So, you know, the situation is extremely dire. We have these girls who are getting infected because of not using the right materials for a pad, or not using the right pad. But they also, apart from sexual exploitation, have to undergo teenage pregnancies because these men who exploit them refuse to use contraception. And so you could imagine a teenage girl with hopes of trying to go to school and then having to get pregnant, then gets disowned by her family. What would be her future? So what comes to awareness should not repeat history. And that's really my motivation of helping these girls. And I always say that when my husband was killed, one of the things that really, really helped me take charge of my life and really survive widowhood was that I could put my hand up and say, I'd like to work and contribute to the family business. I often think about what would my life be if I was not educated, if I did not have a fair chance at you know, going to school, to university. What would have been my chances of surviving widowhood with a 5-month-old child? You know, I shudder to even think about that. So my motivation to keep these girls at school, besides being a personal one, is to ensure that they can continue school. My model is different. I don't do disposable pads. I've tied up with a women enterprise. It's a full women wing, and what we do is these pads are actually stitched up and made by women. And it's a model of use, wash, dry, use again. And it only takes 1,000 shillings to keep a girl in school. I also give them a full year soap supply. I don't sell these pads. I basically go to corporate houses and canvas for these girls. So my corporate partnerships have included the Toyota Foundation, the GEC Golf Tournament. We have Ignite Fitness, Glenmark, banking partnerships with DTB, Guardian Bank, schools as well have tied up with me like Braben, Premier, Nairobi Academy, Oshawa. So I basically go out there, speak to these corporates, speak to people. They raise the money for me, and then we all go together to distribute these pads. I normally ask all my corporate sponsors to choose the schools themselves, because normally corporates have a preference to the kind of schools that they would like to support, and I'm very, very up for that. Yeah.
Well, Riya, actually, you see, this week being International Women's Week, and
Yes.
the amount of work which you're doing for the young ladies, but at the same time, the story which you've shared with us, I think it would be an understatement to say that you're a woman of substance. But I'd still like to ask you a further question, that being a single parent, how do you manage your professional commitments? It's a cliche question, but maybe this is a comment which can go out to the public, because you have your own personal priorities, you have so much going on, besides the radio, besides working in the family business, and also the flower plantation and much more. Share with us.
So motherhood, I think, is the toughest job in the world. Particularly being a single parent, I have certain limitations. I have had to really make some tough decisions when it has come to my career and my child. It was very early on that I decided that, for his sanity and my sanity, I would have to start working, because I don't think that if I did not feel fulfilled professionally as a mother, as professionally as an individual, I would be a good mom. So, and also with my toddler, his name is Yuvraj. He's a spitting image of my husband. And one of the most, I think one of the things that really has helped me be a better parent as well, and balance both my work and my time with him, is that when I'm with him, I try to be very, very intentional about the time that we have together. That's been one of the secrets of my parenting, not secrets, but one of the tools I use in my parenting toolkit. So he's 4 years old, he's going to turn 4 next month. And I'm very big on rituals. So we do things together, whether it's going out for an ice cream and really conversing. And I'm really big on asking him, what was the best thing about your day? So yesterday, the best thing about his whole day was going out to the field to play with his friends. So I'm trying to really also cultivate these things of, we're doing things together. And he should really know what I'm also doing besides being a mom to him. So there are times I bring him to the office. There was a time that he was starting school and I had to be in Holland for a trip for work. And of course, that was a meeting that I could not get out of. So there are days, of course, that I do not feel like a perfect mother who has it all worked out. I do suffer from mom guilt of, oh, was this trip really that essential? Should I have been? But I've learned to make peace with the fact that I can't be everywhere at all times. And Yuvraj is a huge priority. It is only when I cannot get out of a certain work meeting that I would not attend something that revolves around him, but otherwise I'm always there. And the balance is essentially the fact that I'm doing things that I love professionally. That helps me balance the fact that, I'm really a happy parent when I'm with him. Yes.
So basically, you are doing what you're passionate about, and you're passionate about so many things. So that's what's keeping you going. And we have a couple of questions which have come in, Riya. One is Dr. Manu Chandaria. Dr. Manu Bhai? Sorry, you're on mute.
We are setting up a workshop for the Langata women prisoners. And this is one part of that is going to be for sanitary pad. And I think the lady by the name of Madhvi Dalal, she thinks that she will be able to help in that particular part. So I agree with her that it's a huge problem. But now the Kenyan government themselves has decided that every school will be provided, though I think that the quality of what they provide is not acceptable. But let's forget about them. But women prison itself would require quite a number, and they can also sell. The purpose is just that this particular idea of sanitary pad has been going on for a while, and I think Rotary has been involved quite a bit of presenting them. But I think that's necessary that we do it ourselves in the country. At least it will create employment and probably more possibility of reach.
Thank you so much, Dr.
Yes.
Manubhai. Yeah.
Thank you.
Riya, do you have something to say to Dr. Manubhai about the comment?
Thank you, Dr. Chidaria. Of course, I don't think you remember this, but I actually came a few years ago to actually meet you with regard to my project at your office on Limuru Road. And yes, even then you were, very passionate about helping these underprivileged girls. And I see the same today as well. So it really warms my heart. With regard to this Langata Women's Prison and the project that, they will be actively involved in making pads, I think that would be very, very good. Yes, these pads they definitely need to reach a wider base of women who essentially, require them. That has not been done for a variety of reasons. I just want to add to what Leah's question is that there are some people who are very hesitant as well about using reusable sanitary pads because they somehow look at menstrual blood as evil. This has been one of the experiences. So just to merge the two questions, there's a lot of awareness that needs to come into why these girls need to use reusable sanitary pads. Besides being the most cost-effective option on the table, would you rather have a disposable pad given to them or something that there will be continuity in them using it? And yes.
And Past President Leah, I think one of your questions has been answered, but you have a very interesting question, number 2. Would you like to read it out?
Actually, thank you. No, sticking back to the first question, because in my daughter's school in Ethiopia, the IB program, they have to come up with service projects. So they came up with this one for doing recyclable pads, and they won an award for it. But they started finding out how difficult it was. They had like 5 different government schools around them to persuade the girls to, as you said, it's not just. But it's also where do you hang them up? Because if you're living in sort of a slum environment, where do you hang it out outside your door? And then there's no clean available running water. And that's the same problem we have in many areas in Kenya where these kids live. And then of course soap, unless sustainable soap becomes an issue of how they can. So how do you, apart from the fact that, yes, I think it's a much better alternative. I think it's really silly to say that Rotary, we're going to give pads, always pads, to a school for how long? It's not sustainable at all. You'll give them a supply for 6 months, and then, so I think the idea that you're talking about, that these a few people have come up with this thing and how to do it, whether you do it in panties or whatever, or have something attached to the underwear. But how do you recommend the use of, how do you wash them if there is no running water, I guess is my question. And if you don't have money for soap in your project.
Right. Okay. So I totally agree and echo your sentiments regarding the disposable. That was the model I had initially started with, where I would buy truckloads of always pads, go into these remote areas to give the pads to the headmistress. And then one time we had given her a lot of sanitary towels for these girls, all disposable. We went back 3 months later to check on the progress of the girls, what they were continuing, how was the improvement in attendance, because normally they tend to stay away from school for the entire menstrual cycle when they don't have a pad, so that they don't get embarrassed or don't get teased by the boys in the class. When we went back 3 months later and we spoke to the girls, they said, which pads? We didn't get any pads. We only got one pad, only one packet. And we had left like enough for a school of like, there were, I think, about 120 girls. When we investigated what happened to the pads, apparently the headmistress had sold those pads and pocketed the money. You know, and that was an absolute shock to me, because I thought, how can you do that? And you're a woman yourself, and you understand that during your menstrual cycle, this is the most essential thing that you need. It is after that incident that we decided, okay, reusable sanitary pads. But again, being into, you know, when you get into something where you want to make a change, you're so excited to tie up with different people. I even at one point was speaking to some Chinese who, you know, promised me that they would, you know, make it the more self-absorbent one. Everything, all the payments were done. And when those pads came, it was very, very inferior quality, you know. So that was a huge setback for us. My father is in textiles. He has a background, and then one day, and you know, I come from a culture where you don't talk about being on your period. Absolutely, you do not, you know, talk about having a boyfriend. You don't talk about your period. And so one day I said to my mom, this evening when Papa comes home, I'm going to sit down and talk to him about sanitary pads. And my mom looked at me like I had lost the plot. She said, okay. And I said, because can you imagine, what would you feel if your daughter missed school or could not continue her education if she did not have a simple basic sanitary towel? And so my mom said, okay. And I still remember the visual of that evening when I sat down with my dad and I said to him that, you know, I might make you feel very uncomfortable this evening, but I have to have a conversation with you about periods. And he did not, of course, understand it. I had to break it down and tell him, you know, and then get into the nitty-gritty of why I want to discuss a period with him. We tied up, and you know, he brought some samples for me. We sort of did all the tests at home, and then finally we decided, okay, this is the kind of material that would be very good for us to make pads with. Eventually, as we went on, I managed to tie up with a social enterprise, and that's how.
Sorry, Riya. Sorry, we cannot.
Sorry.
Hear.
Yes.
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yes, we can.
Yes. Okay. So essentially, just to cut a very long story short, it's very essential for us to continue to raise awareness, because there is a lot of red tape around using disposable pads. While some of these girls in schools have seen the light, they have been able to really understand that a reusable sanitary pad is far more useful to them than a disposable. Besides sort of eliminating the stigma around that, that's something that I'm actively working on. You normally need, I would say, half a cup of water to wash these pads. That's what our research has actually shown us, and we've sort of tried this as well. Getting the water in some parts has been very hard. So these are the places, of course, that we're still trying to work out solutions on how we can sort of, you know, help them. But with regard to the soap, my model includes giving them soap for a whole year. I normally do not just give the pads to them. I give them soap supply for a full year and pads as well for the full year. The kit includes pads and soap. I hope that answers your question, Leah.
Yes, thank you. I know. Thank you so much for a very deep answer. Maybe I'll talk to you another time. But the next question was about the medicinal marijuana.
Kenya. So this is something I have not really actively looked into. You know, what it would take for Kenya to really legally grow a medicinal marijuana. I know somebody in the business that I could introduce you to, but not here. It's a Dutch person who's doing it. And I could definitely pass over make the introduction. I'd be very happy to make the introduction. I don't think anyone is doing it here, and I'm guessing, you know, there would be a lot of protocol, a lot of regulation around who would be doing medicinal marijuana. I've not personally heard of any farmer or any grower who's ventured into medicinal cannabis.
Okay, thanks. I know Rwanda is doing it, and they're not allowed. It's not legal to use in Rwanda, but they're exporting. So I just thought you might know, but we can follow up another time. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
And we have one comment here from Rotarian Praful Devani from India, who says, we are also running a project called Red Revolution in our district on the similar lines of what Riya is explaining. So congratulations to District 3060. And with that, I will now request Rotarian Rashmi to kindly give a vote of thanks to our wonderful speaker for today.
Thanks, Ritesh. What a fantastic and fascinating journey, Riya. And I'm sure there is much more for you in store in the future. Listening to your experience with the global flower market, your role there, taking care of girls from underprivileged backgrounds as part of the African Girl Foundation, being a radio jockey, a banker, a tarot card reader, and a future astrologer, and I'm booking my slot now. Most people very bemused but impressed. I really identified with the long interview that you did. I remember one which went on for 5 hours when I was very young, and it only ended when I gave my first wrong answer, But I have often wondered in retrospect if they would have spent 5 hours interviewing a guy. I don't think so. Likewise. But I think what really distinguishes you is how you aced, life, and that's a very important learning from you. And also, I'm sure you're a frenetic multitasker, which is something which I think anybody who's managing so many things is bound to be. Being a single mother and yet succeeding in a very male-dominated professional world. Coming from, I think there are a few women here, most of the world that we all operate in is very male-dominated. But yes, women like you are changing boardrooms, they're changing golf courses, and they're also changing this club, Ritesh. So as members of the Rotary Club of Nairobi, we applaud your tenacity and strength. Thank you for coming and being with us and sharing so many things. We look forward to having you over again. And one last word of advice from a mother, that don't suffer any guilt and don't make such desperate attempts to give him input. He's going to take all the input he can from you, from everybody else, and turn on just fine. Be yourself, and he's going to be fine. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, and welcome once again for being part of a small group.
Thank you very much. That's a very, very generous vote of thanks. I'm really floored. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Riya, and thank you, Rashmi. And Rashmi, I would also like to say that I would like to give a tribute. I'd like to say thank you and appreciate all the women in Rotary, all the women who are part of our lives, and especially in this club. And Past President Leah, you are part of this club, so you're included. You're all trailblazers. You're all trailblazers, and I honestly honor and respect the amount of work you've had to do over time. I've read, Past President Evelyn had this wonderful book out, From Glass Ceilings to Open Skies. And I actually read through that, and you're right, in listening to all this, probably the amount of effort you have to put in to actually get your voice heard. It's a matter of courage, and it's also something which you're inspirational to us all. Let's just say, congratulations, well done, and thank you for always being an inspiration. Thank you. And
yes. Thank you, Riya.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the privilege of your time and for the invitation. It's been so lovely to interact with some of you today. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you. And with that, I'd request if we can all raise a toast to Rotary the world over.
Rotary the world over.